Okay, cool. We are almost at 5 minutes in. I think we can get started. Maybe folks will join. This meeting is going to be recorded as well, so I'll send out the recording after this. This is the third session for the senior living that we started. Thanks to Dinesh idea, we started out like starting January, so 2025, we can say. So this is the third month and third session. The first two sessions we talked about underwriting. So this session we have like a special guest to talk about like how to vet and select an operator. So Annabelle is here. So let's get started. Okay, sorry, I have to move this way. Yeah. So the agenda is pretty simple. We'll start with a quick intro, and then we'll get into like the middle of the conversation, and Annabelle will cover this entire conversation, and then in the end we'll have a good amount of time for Q&A, so people can ask anything.
Did you start recording?
Yeah, the recording is already on, so I'll just trim the previous parts out.
Perfect.
Okay. Quick intro about me. My name is Tilak. I'm like primarily from IT industry. So my commercial real estate experience started last year. Currently, like 3 assisted living facility, 1 closing in May. We have 2 land developments that's currently focusing. I'm focusing as well. So again, there are other areas that I focus on. So if you need any assistance in any of these areas, feel free to reach out to me. Then I would like to introduce our special guest here, Annabelle. She has been in the industry for 18 plus years. She's a registered nurse. She's been developing, operating, and consulting the senior living space for across those 18 years. She has 5 ALFs in operation in California, and then there are 2 other facilities that are closing in a couple of months. She's also an active real estate investor as well with single family, multifamily, and RV parks as well. Okay, at this point, I'll hand it over to Annabelle to kind of like continue her intro and then start the session. Thank you, Annabelle, for here and sharing your expertise.
Yeah, no worries. I'm glad to be here. So like Dilak said, I've been in the industry for close to 18 years now. I still have facilities that are currently operating. So I'm doing that. I'm also a consultant here in California and an educator for the California Department of Developmental Services. So we, in California, we train our caregivers and certify them to be direct support professionals. So my approach in this industry is not just as an operator, but I understand both the regulatory landscape of assisted living as well as the workforce, the frontline workforce. So today I'm going to talk about how we vet our operators who are running our facilities. So throughout the presentation, I will probably go back and forth between operator and management companies. They're the same. They both mean the same thing. It's the team that's responsible for the day-to-day operations of your facility. And just want to stress that the success or failure of your investment in this asset class is really directly tied to the operator or the management company that, what their capabilities are, and what their performance is. So that's why we wanted to talk about this subject and just really stress how important it is to vet those operators or management companies. And so why does it matter? In assisted living, your operator, they're more than a vendor. They should really be considered as one of your partners because they're directly shaping the resident experience. They oversee the staff performance, they're managing compliance with regulations, and they're literally influencing your NOI. So your operator is going to be the heartbeat of your community. A high-performing management team is going to elevate your community because they're boosting the occupancy. They're improving family satisfaction. They're reducing the regulatory exposures and liabilities, and ultimately they are protecting our asset, our investment. So what is an operator responsible for? In senior living, management companies are the ones that run the day-to-day operations, but it goes beyond that, right? They oversee your human resources, your staffing. They oversee the budget, compliance, programming such as dining, the maintenance of the facility, marketing, you name it. They do everything. And so they're managing risk, they're protecting your brand, they're driving your company growth, and they're just that operational engine of your asset, right? Not all operators are created equal. Some are growing fast but can't scale. Others have outdated systems. Some are mission driven, but they lack the financial acumen that the investors need. So you really need to have a strong operator. They're not just they're running the numbers. They're not just waiting for projections, but they're running the numbers as you guys are underwriting or you guys are looking at different assets, because they want to make sure that they can deliver as far as staffing, care, and performance. If they're not doing that, if they're not doing their own underwriting on the facility that you're looking at, then you may want to kind of step back and really consider if you guys are going to be a good match. Anyway, so that's why we are vetting our operators. So some of the vetting criteria that I look at. Number one is I am always looking at operators or management companies' track record. I do want to stress that when you guys are looking at facilities, it's really important that you start vetting operators early. Do not wait until you're closing and then start those conversations, because you want to have time to ask tough questions with that operator or that management company. You want to assess whether or not you guys are a good fit. You want to compare models before you guys start. Before, you don't want to be under pressure as you're looking for these operators. But just starting with the basics, you want to ask the operator or management company, how long have they been in the industry? What levels of care have they actually operated? Is it just assisted living? Is it memory care? Is it independent living? And so on. Don't stop at the resume. You want to get real data. You want to know what their average occupancy is in all of their facilities, their entire portfolio. You want to know how long they've been held, each of those facilities, and what their longest standing community is, because this information and these details, they really matter. I like to go a little bit deeper. I'll look at their website, I'll study their portfolio, I'll look at each of their communities, and I like to review their leadership team. I spend time on Google and LinkedIn. I want to understand who these people are and how they show up in the industry. If I'm going to trust them with the asset, I just feel like I want to know what their track record is. I want to know what I'm dealing with. The second thing that I look at is their organizational structure. When I vet a company, a management company, one of the things I do look is at that structure. I want to know who is running things, who's supporting the team on the ground. Leadership structure is directly going to affect the performance of your facility, of your community. Ask for the organizational chart. You want to know who the executive team is, who's involved. How many buildings does that regional vice president oversee, or the area manager oversee? If there's one person covering 20 properties or 20 communities, that's going to be a big problem. That's a red flag for me, because there's no way that they are providing hands-on support to the communities. So you really want an executive. You want somebody that's going to guide the executive director of your facility in solving problems, and when things get tough, they need to have somebody there. If the support is weak from the top, the morale is going to dip, the performance is going to suffer, and your NOI can really take a hit. So the third thing that I look for when I'm vetting operators in management companies is, can you go to the next slide, Thielok? Is transparency and integrity. A solid operator is not just going to talk about their success stories. They're going to be honest with you about challenges that they have faced, how they've handled, these challenges. And so this level of transparency is going to speak volumes about their character and their leadership. When you're vetting somebody, don't be afraid to ask about past issues and just listen closely how they respond. Are they taking ownership of things? Are they reflective about what went wrong, what they learned, or are they deflecting and blaming others? So one of the strongest indicators of integrity, in my opinion, is when an operator volunteers information like their surveys or their licensing reports, citations, even without being asked. So this kind of this openness signals, that they're very confident and they're committed. I just, at the end of the day, you're not really looking for, and you're not going to find somebody who's perfect or who's never made a mistake. But what you really should be looking for is somebody who owns up to their, their mistakes, and they're growing from it. That just, to me, that shows a lot of integrity. The fourth thing that I look at is what is their stabilization model. Whether it's newly opened or recently acquired facilities, that strategic process is what's going to make or break that operation. So you want to understand how they manage those, that critical time, the first 90 to 180 days. Ask them what their onboarding looks like, how they ramp up staffing without overwhelming, that leadership team, or how do they grow their census without compromising care? Because it boils down to, the care, the quality of care that you're providing. If they're acquiring a facility, ask about how they evaluate the existing staff. Do they have a process for identifying who aligns with their standards, and who doesn't? And, how do they deal with that? How are they hiring? How are they firing, etc.? Every seasoned operator should have a clear playbook, a structured model that they're following every time that they're acquisitioning or taking on a new facility. If you have an operator or a management company who they're just kind of winging it and they don't have these answers, that should be a red flag for you. The fifth thing that I look at is compliance, their track record. Regulatory compliance, it's not optional, it's foundational, and consistent issues in, with regulations is another red flag. I always ask when I'm vetting a company or an operator, I ask for the last 3 surveys, the history across their entire portfolio. I look at every facility, not just one facility, because patterns, habits matter. One citation could be an outliner, but reoccurring issues have deeper problems. It just shows deeper problems. So I don't stop there. I check the licensing websites myself for inspection reports. Most states have a website. It's all public record. You can either access these reports or you can request for them. I look at reviews on Google and Yelp. I look at employee feedback on platforms such as Indeed and ZipRecruiter. I just want to know about, these companies. I do research on social media, on YouTube. I'm looking for news videos or news articles, anywhere that might give me some insight on how these people are operating, even when no one's watching. I check the county superior court website. I'm looking for lawsuits, legal actions, are usually tied to negligence or non-compliance. So again, that would be a liability for me when I'm looking at an operator or a company, a management company. Just don't take their word for it. You have to really be diligent about doing your own due diligence. The next one, number 6, I'm looking at culture and core values. Does their mission genuinely resonate with what mine is, or is it just kind of like a tagline on their website or their brochures? When I'm talking to operators, I want to know what they stand for, and how that actually shows up in their day-to-day operation. So ask them about what is their employee turnover rates? How do they keep good caregivers? You know, what's that culture they're doing? What incentive are they having for individuals or caregivers to stay with the company? At the end of the day, great care is going to be rooted on great culture when it comes to the staff. So it's really important that they're taking care of their staff. The last thing, well, one of the last things, number 7, sorry, financial reporting. So financial transparency is a non-negotiable. Ask those operators and management companies how they are providing those reports. You should get monthly P&Ls, whether their financial forecasts are consistent. Are they matching the actual performance? Labor costs, food costs, you need to know all of these things. You need to know everything that's going on with your facility, even if we ourselves as the investors are not the ones there hands-on. We're not doing the operation part of it, but we still need to know all of these things. Dig into how they're controlling labor and food costs, especially. These are going to be 2 of the biggest expenses, the biggest variables that are going to impact your profitability in your senior living business. Sloppy reporting is it's not just numbers, it's a reflection of sloppy operations. So again, just make sure that you are on the same page with that operator or that potential operator. And then the last thing I look for again is transparency with communication. I want to know what their communication style is. I always say I'd rather work with an operator who's going to be honest about all the challenges than one who's going to sugarcoat a mess, right? I don't want to know at the last minute before everything is too late, because I want to be there to support the operator as well. Again, it's a partnership. I always suggest that, you know, as you're choosing an operator, you look at that relationship with them as a true partnership and not just like a vendor relationship or a vendor arrangement. They're not contractors. They're not, you know, people there to do maintenance on your building. They're really, truly your partners. Partnerships are built on trust and transparency and communication. So again, it's so important that you guys are aligning with that operator that you choose. And then lastly, some of the red flags that just stand out to me immediately is if you know, if you hear vague or defensive answers, that's a red flag. If you hear inflated promises or a notice, or if you notice like a revolving door in their leadership team, you know, that's a red flag. If there's a lot of turnover, especially with leadership, you know, there might be a problem there. The other thing is fluff. If an operator is promising 91% occupancy within, you know, 3 to 6 months, or claim that they've never had a deficiency, it's usually fluff. It's not facts. Everybody has some type of deficiency at one time or another. Pay close attention to their accessibility. If the regional vice president or executive team is overloaded, if they're consistently not available, ask yourself, you know, what's going on here. If they don't have any clear metrics or dashboards or milestones, again, you might want to think about interviewing other operators or other management companies. And then lastly, just look for structure. If they can't show you those metrics, you're not just, you don't want to be flying blind. You just want to be partnering with somebody that you guys can trust and you can work together. So I think that's kind of it for me when I'm vetting an operator. If you guys have questions, I do have a checklist. If you guys want to email me, or I could send it to Thilock. It's kind of a checklist that I use as I go down that list of management companies, and I'm calling and setting up those calls or those discovery calls. So if you want a copy of that, I'll send that to you, Thilock, and you can just give it out.
I'll after this session, I send a recording. I will include those checklists as well, part of that email.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of information in a short period of time.
Sorry.
So for folks, I'm sure like people are like new to the space. There may be a lot of questions. Please fire away. Annabelle is very good at answering these things.
I had a quick question. When you're talking about your executive oversight, you put EDs and RVPs. I'm not sure what those stand for. Could you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so typically when you guys have a community or you're looking at a community to acquisition, the executive director is usually the person at, boots on the ground, the person that's going to be at the facility. If it's a management company that's overseeing several communities, they usually will have like a regional vice president. Say they got like 10 communities in Ohio and then 10 in Florida. They're going to have maybe 2 regional vice presidents for that area. And so the regional vice president is kind of like the corporate person that's going to support the executive director.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. This is my first intro into senior living, so sorry if I ask a basic question.
Oh, no worries.
What kind of structure does your facility management team, do they take care of hiring medical staff as well?
Yeah, so that when you are hiring a management company, typically they're going to do all of the hiring, the firing, and the scheduling. They do everything.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Just to add on that, Parker. So the staff and everybody are employees of the operator. So they are responsible for hiring and firing, and also making sure like the payroll runs, all the benefits, all the HR related things. They are completely 100% responsible for that.
Perfect. Thanks. Yeah, I'm currently in medicine. I'm a PA, so I have a bunch of questions over like how many nurses per patient, or PCTs, or doctors per group, but I'm sure that's for another conversation.
It's going to vary state by state because the regs are all different and they're changing too. So it's going to vary state by state.
Cool. Thank you. Very good presentation. Appreciate it.
I think there are a couple of questions from Bharat on the chat. Okay. What are the big challenges and surprises you have seen?
Big challenges. Operators who are overpromising and underperforming. So that's a big challenge. Staffing has been a big challenge for me in California. It's just, it depends on the operator. That's why it's so important. I see a lot of mismanagement, and that's why you're going to see a lot of these facilities and communities come on the market because of poor management. They have to have a strong marketing plan to keep the occupancy high. So I think that's another one is, if they don't have a strong marketing plan, obviously the occupancy is going to be lower. You're going to be losing money and be in the red. So the operating management company or the operator is just going to be the key to your investment.
Yeah. I think there was a second part to that question, which is like any surprises you have seen.
I've seen a lot. I mean, I have seen operators that have cheated, mismanaged, and embezzled money from the facilities. So again, that's why that part about the financial transparency is super important, that you guys are, whoever your asset manager is of your team, your general partner team, that they are closely working with the company, the management company or the operator in getting those financials. I really strongly believe that whoever the asset manager is of your team needs to do those, needs to go and visit the property, the facility from time to time, and not just take, take their word for it. You got to see that. You got to see things. You got to be there. You got to be present.
Cool. Thank you, Annabelle. Next question I see in the chat is like, have you seen facility where operator is also one of the owners? Is that a workable model?
Yeah, so I'm an operator and owner. It is. It just depends on how hands-on that your team wants to be. There's a lot of teams that don't hire management companies. They are the operators. They'll hire administrator or an executive director, and they're still managing it. So yeah, it's a workable model. It just depends on how hands-on you are wanting to be.
I have a question about that. If an operator, brings capital into an LP, wouldn't that create a situation where they've got a vested interest in making sure they do make money because they're bringing capital as well as managing the property?
You want to answer that one, Thilak?
Yeah. So yes. So Richard, yes, I think in an ideal scenario, when you are hiring an operator for your community, if they also bring in money, then it becomes like a well-aligned incentive, such way that not only are they getting the management fee, but they are also getting the share of the profit, right, through the equity they bring in, right? So ideally, you want them to be invested in that way, but every operator operates a little differently. It comes down to how you negotiate the agreement with them. So if you are able to get them to put some money in that, then that's even better, I would say, more than the management fees.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay, there is another question for some reason it says name not available, so I don't know who asked that question. What does the licensed administrator do that an operator doesn't?
Okay. So that's kind of a question that it just kind of depends on how you're structuring it. So for like for my situation here in California, I started as the operator, the licensed administrator. As I scaled into more communities, I stepped away from being the administrator of the facility, just so I'm less hands-on. So I guess it varies because not all states have a licensed administrator. I don't know if that helps answer your question, but it just kind of depends. Like for me, I have administrators at all my facilities, but I still consider myself as the operator because I'm overseeing all of those administrators, if that makes sense.
Yeah, whoever asked that question, if you have follow-up, feel free to chime in. Okay, not sure.
What's the market look like for management companies? So, are there a couple big national chains that are around, or it kind of sounds like a lot of them are dispersed into local markets?
Yeah, there's tons. There's tons throughout the United States, and they all have their market. Some will only stay in the same state. Some will only stay in certain areas. So it just kind of varies, but they're all over the place. Some are huge companies, corporations, and some are just, small shops that will do less than 10. And so like, for example, if I'm looking for like I was looking in the Kentucky area, and I just kind of looked to see who is serving that area, right? And I try to stay with people who are close or who are local, as local as they can be, and start from there.
Gotcha. So that is your preference to stay local. I was thinking, economies of scale. You have a national company, it might be cheaper, but you're saying the local maybe is the higher value of care or
Well,
better image.
like, for example, if the company's based out of Texas, but they have maybe, 10 properties in Kentucky, then I'll consider that because they're going to have a regional vice president in the area. So, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll just add on one more thing there is like what you are looking for in an operator when you're selecting for a community is like somebody who knows the state regulations well, somebody who knows the market well, somebody who has local connections that especially for staffing and hiring, it's like they need to have connections locally so that they can hire people faster, right? Even for marketing, they need to know the market well to know like, okay, what are the hospitals they need to have engagement with, or what are the case managers or like local events that they need to push in this community well, right? So yeah, operator who knows the local area well will be better pushing than a national operator who may be just entering into the market. They will have their own ramp up time, and you don't want your community to be the one. Right. So, right. Actually,
Thank you.
I think there was another question, but before we go there, I have a follow-up on that. Annabelle, you can answer like, how do you find these operators, right? Given that they are so fragmented, right? How do you find these operators before you can start bidding?
I do all kinds of stuff. I'll Google them. I will go to, like, say I'm focusing on San Antonio, Texas area. I will go to each of those large communities, and I'll find out who their operator is or who's the management company for those, those facilities. I'll start there. And then go to LinkedIn. I just kind of put it out there. I add all these companies, and I look at their websites and see where their portfolio, what's in their portfolio, where their facilities are located, and I have this whole spreadsheet. So, I keep it logged in the spreadsheet. So when I am looking for a certain area, I may have that information there. If not, I'm going to add it to my, my database.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah, even one of our investors, he went on to the social media, the Facebook page for that particular facility, and looked at all the positive comments there about the facility, and then invested his.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that was even we didn't know they had a Facebook page.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Do you have a recommendation on the size of the property? I know in traditional multifamily, your management team is based off of, if the property is large enough to afford a property manager, maybe if it's above 50 units, then you could pay for one. Obviously, you need a property management company on every one of these. Do you find it easier if you get into a larger senior living space because you can afford a higher quality management team?
I do, but the thing is, after talking to so many operators, they really only want to get into companies or facilities that are like, 60 bed or more. They don't want these small ones. They don't want any 20 bed, 30 bed facilities. It's really hard to find a management company. You may be able to find a local operator or administrator, but after talking to these management companies, they want bigger assets.
Thank you. Yeah, just trying to put a target on the market. Appreciate it.
Yeah. One other thing I'll add on to that is like on top of the operations, you also look at like from a number standpoint, the community size helps in cushioning certain challenges, right? If you lose 5 or 6 residents, if the facility or like the community itself is only 20 or 30, the 5 may make a huge dent in your cash flow, right? But if it is like a 50 or 70, 5, even when you lose it in a week or 2 weeks, you can still kind of like weather that storm, right? Same thing with like any big real estate expenses that come, like suddenly a roof damage happens, or like you have to replace an HVAC that's like 100K, 200K, right? Smaller facility that can take a big toll, that may wipe out all your profits for the next 1 year, right? But because you can kind of like weather that as well. I think there's another question, like how do you research competitors? Okay, I'm not clear whether the competitors mean operators or like other communities operating in that same space. Like, so whoever asked that question, maybe you can clarify that.
Hi, I'm Anna Lang, and I don't know why my name's not showing up, but that's my question. Just other facilities that we're all going towards the same market. And if that market is large in that location, then it's great. If it's a small demographic, then we're all competing for the same, small number of people. So how do you determine what how many operators are in the market, or what you're differentiating, how you're going to differentiate yourself from the others?
So first I'll start with looking at the demographics of the area. So what is senior population? Is it growing senior population? Is it dropping? I also look at the population of individuals between the ages of 45 and 55, 45 and 60, because those are the individuals, those are the children of the persons that are going into these assisted living facilities. Typically, we want our parents to be close to where we're at. So I definitely look at that. I look at the income, the average household income in the area. I look at websites such as seniorly.com, Genworth, for cost of care to get an idea of what the market rates are. And then when I kind of determine that, I also look at like how many facilities are in the area, how many newer facilities are in the area. If you have these big communities like Brookstone or Sunrise, they've already done feasibility studies, and that's why they're there. Beyond that, if I'm really interested in the area, I will make calls. I will ask questions. If you go to placeformom.com, they're a placement agency, and I lie, and I just say I'm looking for a place for a family member, and they'll set up tours. They'll set up Zoom, virtual tours or whatever. I will go to the facility and do secret shopping, or have somebody go as well. So I just do a whole lot of research on the area.
Yeah, it's easy to find demographics on the population. What can be more challenging is to see how many facilities, how many beds they have, what their capacity is. Are they full, or or if they're half empty too? Because if everyone's half empty, but there's strong growth, then there's too many competitors. So that's what I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, I will literally step foot and I'll go into each of those facilities and ask for tours and ask those questions.
Okay, and then how do you identify all the facilities that are available?
I just Google it, or you can go on the website, the licensing website, and you can usually do a search of facilities by zip code or by city.
Okay.
And seniorly.com is a good one too. You kind of just put in the city and it'll give you, a list of facilities.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks.
Okay. Couple of things I'll add. There is like, there is a company called NIC, NIC. So you can also get some data about, like, similar to how you can do CoStar reports for multifamily. NIC actually gives analysis for like a particular zip code. Will do like, okay, how many communities are there? Like, what is the supply and demand in that particular zip code, and what is the occupancy rate in that zip code, right? Sometimes it may say like 90% occupied, right? That's average, right? Average or like spread across it. So you can get those details as well. one step further, if you are like, you've selected a facility, you still want to have like a truly know, like, hey, what is the supply and demand for that facility near that area? You can also do market study. So market study, what it means, like they will look at like, okay, within the 5-mile radius of that particular community, how many people are living there? Like what is the projected population growth? And then they will break it down by like, okay, how many people are between this age and that age, right? And then they will say like, what is the percentage of people of 65 to 85 that are going to move to assisted living, right? Then they will come up with a number. And then they actually count all the facilities within that 5-mile radius and then add up like available beds. And then they will also look at some occupancy if possible. And then they say like, okay, this 5 miles radius has a demand of like, I don't know, 500 beds, and the current supply is only 400. So there is a net 100 demand there. Or like it could be reverse, wherein like it's the demand is 400, but there are 500 beds, there's oversupply. So that is a market study. There are companies that can do that, and you can get that as well.
And which companies do that market study that show how many beds are in the area currently or going to be on track? I understand how to get the census data.
Yeah.
Yeah. But who does that?
So it's all state-based. Some are national companies. You can send me a message after. I can share one I'm using. So they actually go through all these communities, like in person, similar to what Annabelle said, like walk and get these counts. You can actually get the number of beds people have from the county. It's a register. Like anytime a community opens up, they have to license, and the licensing, it shows like how many beds are they licensed for. So you can get that supply or like from there.
Yeah, it's very hard. I'm struggling with that, so I'll contact you offline.
One of the companies, it's called Senior Market Research Associates. I think that's what they're called. They're a company that does market research and feasibility studies.
Yeah. If they're licensed for Medicare and Medicaid, that's much easier. But if they're not, if they're just private pay, that's where it gets a little bit trickier.
You can still find those websites, like the license information public in the county websites. It's public, or like state websites, like the number of communities and the number of beds they are licensed for. It will not be possible for you to find the occupancy of those communities because that's not reported, but the beds itself, you can find it.
Okay. I maybe you might have to demonstrate some for me. So.
Okay, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Richard, you have your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, Annabelle. We're grateful for your time this evening and all the awesome nuggets that you've dropped so far. I'm curious, out of the assisted livings that you currently have acquired over time, were they already operational when you acquired them, or were there some that you converted to assisted living?
No, so I did all startups. I started it myself, yeah.
And out of all of the red flags that you mentioned, have you ever encountered anything where patient advocates, how those operators are dealing with patient advocates? And the reason I ask this, my wife is an RN and works at an assisted living. Mm-hmm. And she says the biggest pain point that they have is, especially when there's people there that unfortunately don't have those sons and daughters that even look after them, or perhaps they survived their children and now they have to depend on a patient advocate who truly does not demonstrate having their best interests at hand, and it creates havoc when they're trying to get this person some medical attention or what have you, because they want to keep them within a budget. And I'm just wondering, have you encountered anything of that nature?
Are you referring to like if they cannot afford the assisted living, or if they don't have the resources for medical care and attention?
It's more the resources with the medical.
So in California, we have an ombudsman. So every state has some type of agency for aging. So we have that here in California, and then we have a county ombudsman. So that ombudsman is our go-to. You know, usually in a hospital, there's the social workers, right, that will assist you, but you have to be admitted in the hospital. And so here in California, we call them a local ombudsman, and so they're our go-to person if we have a individual who doesn't have those resources. They will help. So we have a lot of county support here. I'm not sure. I guess it would vary, you know, depending on your state and county.
Yeah, we're in Florida. And one last question. Out of any, you mentioned here a little while ago when Parker asked the question about size, and you said that most of the operators are looking for something 60 or above.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, of any that you may have or considered turning into an assisted living, maybe because it's more of a rural area, have you considered trying to get on board some sort of a medical staff in-house that's going to service first and foremost those people, and perhaps have an office that can service people in that general area? So, for lack of a better term, having kind of a mixed use facility where ground floor would be those medical offices, practices, and under the same token, they're servicing the that population that's housed there.
No, that's never come up with me. I do like to say, you know, with assisted living, we try to stay away from medical services and that term medical, right? We're not offering skilled nursing services because it's a whole different ballgame when it comes to skilled nursing. Assisted living is just people who don't need that skilled level of care, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, to be honest with you, I've never even considered it because I try to stay away from the word medical term. I'm a nurse, and I don't even say I'm a nurse when it comes to my businesses because I don't want any liability. I don't want to use my license.
Yeah, that's what she does. She did. Don't mention that I'm an RN.
Yeah.
Okay. Owen,
Thank you.
thanks, Richard. Owen, go ahead. We can't hear you, Owen. We still can't hear you. We can see you're talking, but we can't hear you.
Maybe type it in chat.
Yeah, type it in chat and we are happy. I can read it for you. In the meantime, if others have questions, feel free to queue up. Okay.
Owen typed his.
Okay, so Owen's question is like, we have a master plan of over 200 plus acres, among which we can build 300 plus senior bed. How to allocate them for independent living? Okay. Okay, so how to allocate them for independent senior, assisted living and memory care is question, like 300 plus. Annabelle, you want to take it, or I can also take this? So it's up to you.
You can take it, but you know, in my opinion, it depends on the layout, right, of your facility. But you can go ahead and take that.
Okay. Yeah. So I would say like there are three factors comes into play. One is like you have to do the market study first, right? What does the market need in there? Right? You need to know like is it in short of independent living or like assisted living or memory care, right? You need to know that need first before you can decide the number of beds. Number two is that you are it's each type of senior housing, like independent living, assisted living, and memory care, has different rates of lease up. Like independent living, on average, it's like you can get only 4 units or like 4 units per per month, meaning like only 4 people move in every month. The lease up is very slow, right? So if all 300 of your units, even if there is a demand for it, is independent living, it's gonna take 25 months before it becomes, actually not 25 months. It's like probably like or 75 months before it becomes full, because the lease up is going to be where it's a long time. So the lease up stabilization is going to be done. So there are other factors around like independent living. The second aspect is like, if it is like more than 100 units, one of the recommendation is like combining independent living, senior living, and memory care matters a lot. If you think about it, the seniors who want to move to independent living, they are not making that decision lightly, right? Because they are basically moving away from where they're living to a place where they're going to stay there for the rest of their life, pretty much, right? So if you just offer independent living, that will serve them for a bit of a time, but then after some point, they will require more support, and at that point, they have to move again, right? That's why big communities, 100+ communities, they typically offer independent assisted living and memory care together, so that they can age in place. So people move in, and then after some years, they may require some assistance. They can just move within the same community to a different unit, and then the same caregivers are still providing care for them, like, so they're not moving away. So it's not a big change. So that's why it's better to have, especially if you have like thinking about like 300+. We call it as continuous care or like continuum care, where like people are aging in place. So it's good to have that mix of all these things. Third, I would say, even on the expenses side, having independent assisted memory care will help you on expenses a little better. Independent living, people think like it's very close to multifamily, so that you can actually get more people. But if you think about the trigger points of like why somebody would want to move to independent living compared to a multifamily, there is no strong reason, right? Other than like they just don't want cooking, right? Or like activities, right? So the trigger point for people moving to independent living is like a very flexible, so they can keep postponing the decision when they want to move to independent living. Whereas with assisted living and memory care, the trigger points are there because they require assistance. At some point, either the kids or the doctor have recommended like, hey, you cannot live alone, you have to move to a community, right? So at that point, the decision is made for them, right? So that's why having a distribution of this helps a lot in terms of like leasing up. If you just have independent living, lease up is going to be a challenge. So yeah. Okay, cool. So it looks like 100 independent, 60 assisted, and 30 bed memory care. I would even increase more to assisted living. Again, it all completely depends on the market, right? If the market has a huge need for independent living, it's okay. So I would reverse this a little bit, without knowing details about the location and everything. I would actually say like keep the independent living small, like 50 or 60, and have assisted living a lot more, and then memory care like this, similar to independent living. And so that way you are getting good revenue, and coverage is also it's good, and your lease up is not totally dependent on independent.
I want to add that when you're doing that, to design your layout with your independent living, where you have the option of converting it to assisted living, just in case.
Oh, other things, I think this would be obvious when you're talking to a developer, is like have separate entrances for independent, assisted, and memory care. Like people who are moving to independent, they do not want to see people who require assistance, or people who are having memory challenges, because that just puts them off. Like they're like, oh man, I'm going to be like this in the future, right? So have separate entrances. So when you're constructing the layout and everything, those things needs to be considered. Otherwise, you will face challenges in the lease up again. Okay, awesome. So Medford, Oregon. Oh yeah, Oregon is also another state where actually the public pay is very good. The public actually pays better than private in some places. So good location. Yeah. But one thing I did learn recently is like somebody shared this number, is like construction is pretty expensive now. And they say like we were in a conference, in NIC conference in San Diego. In the presentation, they said like right now for every dollar you spend on construction, the return is only 70 cents apparently. So because of the time it takes to build and then time it takes to lease up, the returns are not so great. So something for you to keep in mind. Folks, questions? We are almost at time. Maybe we can take one more question if people have. Okay. If not, I'll thanks everyone for attending this, and thank you so much, Annabelle, for like sharing all your wisdom about this and answering all the questions patiently. This was extremely valuable to me and everyone. So Annabelle's information is here. If you want to reach out to her directly, feel free to. My information is also here if you want to reach out. So now you know how important operator selection is and all the things that you need to do in operator selection. Like I'm glad to say Annabelle is a part of my team in our acquisition, so he does all the asset management and everything. So when you're looking for senior housing, make sure like you have somebody who's familiar with asset management, and so that they can help out. Yeah. Erin, Annabelle's information is in the slide deck. I'll share the slide deck in the email later, so you'll be able to get that as well. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Tilak. This is you have been organizing these sessions. This is really appreciated very much.
Happy to, Dinesh. Thank you.
Can we access
Thank
the
you,
recording from the last 2 months?
Yes, I can send out. Like we didn't have the recording for the first one, but the second one we have. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you, Annabelle. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
Okay.